What's going on, everybody? This is Frederick Douglass Bussey, and today's episode of the Breaking Orbit podcast, we're going to be talking about being tied up in knots, NOTS, knots, and how we as high performers, entrepreneurs, and leaders can learn how to unleash ourselves from these knots and be able to be more powerful and to soar into the destiny that we've been created for. Power Lunch starts right now. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong podcast. Breaking Orbit podcast starts right now. In my book, Breaking Orbit, which gives the name for this podcast, I talk about the concept of people believing that others are special. And one of the things that tends to mess us all up so much is the idea of what we're not, right? And it shows up in so many different ways. There are certain personality types that are going to lean into ambition, that are going to seek being greater. And there's nothing wrong with, in fact, it is a desirable trait to be as great as we possibly can be, to be all that we were meant to be and created to be. The challenge is that we live in worlds where we are conditioned to be the opposite of that, where we are not taught to stand out, but to fit in. Fitting in is how you can control a society. Fitting in is how you can keep law and order. Fitting in is how you can control the masses, how you can influence people and make a ton of money. It doesn't mean that influence is wrong. What it does mean, though, is that it counteracts our natural capacity to be great, our gift. In the book, I talk about the concept of your gift. Your gift is your natural, your God-given capacity to be all that you were created to be, to impact the world in a special, unique, and powerful way. And yet many people, most people never discover this power. Most people never lean into it. They never understand who they are, what they were meant to be. And so I wrote the book, Breaking Orbit, in order to be able to discover that path to discovering your greatness, to discovering your gift, to being able to live a fully realized life. Being tied up in knots, all the things that we are not, is one of the challenges that leaders and entrepreneurs face. It is the biggest hurdle we have to get over. And many people who are high performers, who are high achievers, are caught in the paradox between what they have accomplished and what they believe they are not. And most of us live in this world where we are defined by the things that we are not. I'm not strong enough. I'm not powerful enough. I'm not emotionally stable enough. I'm not successful enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not. And so we get tied up in the things that we can't do, won't do, aren't willing to do, aren't equipped to do, aren't qualified to do, don't know how to do, all the things that we're not. And when those things define us, we live our lives in the deficit of our identity and not in the fullness of the capacity of who we really are. In this podcast, we don't talk as much about business. We talk more about the realities of personal development, of becoming and realizing your fullest self. But in the capacity of my work with clients and entrepreneurs, what I've discovered is that many people are the number one reason why most of us do not achieve the things that we want to achieve is because we live in this place of notness. We're tied up in knots. We are unsure about who we are and what we're supposed to be and how we can accomplish these things. And the most powerful thing that I have discovered is that discovering your gift allows you to untie all those knots. Because then your life, your very existence, exists in this place where all you are is your gift. That's the most important thing. It's all that matters. And that's what you're living out of. That's what you're living into every single day, being able to exist in that space. And it's very, very hard for people to be able to do that because there's so many other different signals and so much other conditioning that we're having to overcome. How do we overcome these things? How do we live into this other reality, right? And I don't want to talk over people's heads or talk past you or whatever. But practically speaking, how many times have you looked at someone that you admire and thought, they're great, they're amazing, they're fantastic, but the reason why we admire them is because they are what we aspire to be. And conversely, what we tell ourselves is they are everything that I'm not. If I could only be like them. How many of us have had parents who have encouraged us to be more like our older siblings, to be more like the people down the road, or the children in the family at church, or like their boss's daughter or son? They hold up examples of these people and they say, this is what you should aspire to be, but they do it from a place of notness, right? This is not who you are, but this is who I want you to be. I wish you were this. And very often, the reason that our parents do this is because they also live in a world and exist in a world and a place where they are identified or identify themselves as what they are not. We're not like these people. We're not like them. And sometimes they even mean it in a positive way. We're different than those other people. We separate ourselves out. And so the natural human instinct is to be singular in our identity, is to stand out. But society, because it presses everything to the middle, everything to the mean, everything to the average, right? Normal. Because it does that, what happens is that we find ourselves in this place where all we can do is define ourselves by not being extraordinary, not sticking out, not being extra, only by who and what we are not. There are no classes in school. There are no courses usually in your job where you are taught to discover. And there are more and more resources that are being developed to help people to lean into certain strengths, right? In a later episode of the podcast, we're going to dive deeper into the distinctions between what it means to be gifted, what it means to be talented and skilled, what it means to have all of these other elements. But just as, I have 3 children, this is one of them here, my youngest. And just as we learn to see our children as differently and uniquely talented and skilled, each of them, each person, each one of us has our own powerful gift, our own way of showing up in the world, our own way of creating a dent in the universe. And if we never discover that, we live in this deficit. We live in this feeling of lack, of not being who and what we're supposed to be. One of the things that I really strive to teach my children is that they are all special, but they're special in their own powerful way. And not comparing them one to another, but simply saying you were designed to be all that you were meant to be. Okay, thank you. So how do we then learn to lean into that? The power of discovering your gift is that it unleashes the world for you, because what we learn is how not to combat negative thinking with positive thinking, but not thinking at all. Studies show that psychologists recognize that negative thinking is 4 to 7 times more powerful than not thinking anything at all, right? So we often think that the opposite of negative thinking is positive thinking. In reality, the opposite of negative thinking is instinctive thinking, acting instinctively. Because when you have to think a thought, it requires energy. And if you have a natural gift, being able to lean into your natural gift means that you are acting on instinct, on your natural design, what you were created to do most powerfully. So I'll give you an example. Jeff Moore had a great quote that I love, and I've been thinking about this for over a year. And he says that the natural state of water is clarity. The mind's natural state is clarity. And if you are ever looking at a muddy river or a muddy pond or a muddy puddle, you can't see through it or to the bottom because all the sediment, the mud, the dirt is stirred up in the water. And so it's creating all this cloud. And that is the way that negativity works in our minds. That's the way the knots work in our mind. The way that the knots work is that they become all of this cloud and this mud and this sediment and the way that we're thinking. They obstruct our ability to see who we truly are and what we're meant to do. The design that we have in ourselves, the powerful design to be creative, to be innovative, to be leaders, to be impactful, to decipher the path forward that we need to make, whether it's as leaders or individuals. So when all these things, all these other thoughts, all these other invasions of emotion and thinking and conditioning cloud our judgment and our vision, we're not able to see who we are meant to be. But that is not our natural state. If you look at a baby is never born with all of this judgment and shame and guilt or trauma or narratives that are running in its head. If you look at a baby, in a baby's natural state, when they are hungry, when they are fed and they are warm and they are dry, they are at peace. And you see a baby laying in its crib, it's cooing, right? If it lays on your shoulder, it's soft and its breathing is measured. The baby is at peace because there are no thoughts or no wants or no needs, right? The baby is not consumed with what is not. And over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 100 years, we become consumed with everything that we're not. And when you finally get to your old age, you ever see a person who is retired, who is, they've come to nearing the end of their journey. And you know how old people sometimes, I say old people, but our elders, they learn to say what's on their mind because they no longer care what you think. They're no longer consumed with what you think about them, what they are not, what you think that they are not. They know who they are and they live into that. And so what we have to learn to do is to make this arc from being a child, a baby, an infant with a clear mind, absorbing the world at breakneck speed, learning like we will never learn before. And then we learn this one thing that becomes the core of everything that we learn after that, which is, this is what I'm not. And I have to be what other people believe I should be instead of being who I was created to be. And that is the battle that we face and we fight every single day. We constantly are at war with who we were created to be and who everyone else says we should be. And when we're able to finally let go of that, all those other thoughts, the muddy river of our mind, the muddy ocean of our mind can slowly settle. And then we have clarity. And then we can see our path forward. And if you've ever been to the Caribbean shores, the beautiful beaches around the world, maybe in the Maldives or in Greece, and you see clear water, what is it? It's beautiful. And the thing about water is that it is naturally clear. We look at it as blue, but what the water does as we look out over the ocean is that reflects the sky. And so it takes on this blue hue. But water is clear. And that's how our minds should be. When we are clearly thinking, when we are in our most natural state, we are in our most powerful state. There are things that we were designed to do that we know how to do that we don't even know we know how to do, but we never get to do them. We never get to lean into that creativity, that influence, that impact, because we never learn how to be who we were designed to be and not who we're not. When we learn to discover our gift, we learn how to release all the knots in our lives. So hopefully that's been helpful for you today. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or even on LinkedIn, let me know what you think. Where do you see in your life that maybe you're tied up in knots, N-O-T-S, all the things that you're not, trying to seek validation from others and or outside of yourself, another degree, another certification, another car, another relationship. Where are the knots showing up in your life? Learn to discover for yourself your own greatness. You're amazing in your own special way. I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Breaking Orbit podcast. Ever forward.